Perhaps America's biggest mistake was making people believe that the consumer dream is the path to happiness. But just one day, paychecks vanish, bills pile up, companies shut down, everything collapses in the blink of an eye. Los Angeles, the city that once illuminated the dreams of millions, is now witnessing an unprecedented wave of massive layoffs. Thousands of tech employees, film set workers, retail staff are losing their jobs with just a brief email. No more jobs, no more income. And just a few weeks later, no more roof over their heads. The neighborhoods once filled with luxury cars now witness former employees bowing their heads to sift through trash to get by. And the shopping malls that were once crowded with consumers are now as empty as abandoned shipwrecks. In today's video, we will take you inside Los Angeles, a city rotting from the core, where the wave of mass layoffs not only takes away jobs, but also crushes the American consumer dream and leaves the hopes of a prosperous life in trash bags thrown by the roadside. There is a silent but ruthless purge sweeping through Los Angeles, and ironically, those who once kept the city running are now the first to be left behind. When financial news reports start repeating the words deficit and cuts, few can imagine that this could turn into layoff letters delivered directly to workers. But that's exactly what's happening in Los Angeles, as the city government acknowledges a nearly $1 billion deficit, and 1,600 workers are preparing to leave their jobs and stable lives. The California dream, once a promise of sustainable jobs and affordable housing, is collapsing, right before the eyes of those who once believed in it. In response to the severe budget crisis, a recent press conference at City Hall delivered a blow that shocked the entire city, cutting services, restructuring personnel, and deeply slashing items that were once the backbone of the community. The consequences are no longer just a theoretical concept on paper. It has become evident in everyone weaving through every avenue of Los Angeles. The cars, packed with the belongings of those who have just lost their jobs, sit silently by the roadside, like silent coffins carrying the stable past of a lifetime. The once clean and peaceful residential areas are now sporadically filled with hunched figures, lying amidst trash and despair. But more seriously, it is an undeniable reality. Every time the city tightens its belt, the wave of people falling into homelessness rises again. And the victims, almost always the most vulnerable, the wage earners without accumulated assets, without the power to speak up, and without anyone standing by their side. Not everyone falls to the bottom overnight. But like the 2009 Great Recession that a council member recalled, the death spiral from job loss, income loss, loss of faith, and ultimately loss of housing. Just one slip is enough. The WeRLA program providing legal support to prevent evictions is still in place, but will it be enough for the thousands of people who are about to lose their ability to pay rent in the coming weeks, when the wave of job losses has not yet subsided and the number of people without shelter increasingly exceeds the capacity for assistance? We used to think that homelessness was only an issue for failures, for those on the fringes. But now that fragile boundary is fading away. And if those who once kept the city prosperous and livable can now also be abandoned, is there anyone truly immune to this wave of job loss crisis? We all understand that the decisions made at the conference table, amid spreadsheets and budget lines, have left the deepest marks not in the books, but on the cold sidewalks throughout Los Angeles. Because after each cut, it's not just a job that disappears, but a chain of consequences that quietly begins to unfold. Unpaid bills, overdue rent, and finally, the apartment door locked forever by the person who just lost their job. From the high floors of the City Hall, perhaps no one hears the sound of the lock turning for the last time. But down on the ground, it was the sound that marked the beginning of a dark chapter that no one ever wished to enter: homelessness. According to the latest statistics in 2025, the number of homeless people in Los Angeles County has reached 75,312, an astonishing figure when considering that these are people with nowhere to return, right in the city once dubbed the American Dream for millions. Although reports indicate that the number of makeshift tents on the sidewalks has decreased by about 5 to 10%, equivalent to around 3,600 people, this does not mean that the crisis has eased. On the contrary, that number reflects a harsher reality. Over 70% of the homeless in Los Angeles currently have no fixed abode. Each day for them is a struggle for survival, on the streets, in cars, or anywhere that can provide temporary shelter from the rain and sun. An already overwhelmed system is now even more exhausted. Just a few weeks after the first rounds of layoff announcements, the shelter system in Los Angeles began to record a surge in new arrivals. Those who are first-timers seeking shelter carry faces still marked by disbelief, as they have yet to come to terms with what has just happened. A 59-year-old building inspector, who just lost his job after nearly 20 years, is temporarily living in a pickup truck parked behind an abandoned shopping centre in the valley. He used to sign contracts to support public works, but now he has to apply for emergency assistance. "I never imagined I would end up in this situation," he said, "but everything happened too quickly." The truth is, homelessness today is no longer the outdated image of people wandering on the fringes of society. It has changed and become closer than ever. Now it could be anyone's story. An office worker laid off, a single father losing his job, or an elderly person unable to work. And if Los Angeles continues to spiral deeper into the vortex of mass layoffs, housing shortages, and stagnant support policies, what is called someone else's problem could very well become the reality for you and me, just after an unforeseen event. It is paradoxical that in a city with Hollywood and the busiest commercial district in the United States, there are still corners where people have to huddle under bridges or find some secluded alley to rest. They have tried their best, but it seems that this system no longer has a place for the poor. Los Angeles is not lacking in lights. But it seems that light has never reached the hidden corners where more and more people are being pushed into. And when the story of homelessness is no longer far away, but right among the people who used to keep the city running every day, can we still continue to see it as someone else's problem? Or at some point, any of us could be the one left behind just because of a budget cut. Not everyone living on the streets of Los Angeles today is someone who never had a dream. Many of them grew up believing in a simple thing, that if they worked hard, saved money, and lived right, there would be a home to return to. That is the spirit of the American dream. A classic dream where success is measured by stability, by a mortgage-paid house, by the first college degree in the family. But in the past few decades, another dream has begun to emerge alongside the American dream: the consumer dream. This concept is no longer based on sustainable accumulation, but on relentless consumption. It's not work hard to succeed, but buy a lot to prove success. Media, social networks, advertisements, all sing the same tune. The more you spend, the happier you are, and the more American your life becomes. But the problem arises when the economy falters, when jobs can no longer sustain. That very dream begins to weigh heavily on the shoulders of those who once chased it. In Los Angeles, thousands of people laid off during the recent budget crisis not only lost their jobs, but also lost the ability to pursue the lifestyle that society forced them to believe was normal and natural. Credit cards loaded with debt, car loans, installment payments for appliances all become shackles, pulling them bit by bit to the bottom of the abyss. In this system, you are encouraged to borrow money to live now and pay the price later. But when the ability to pay is no longer there, the price you have to pay is a roof over your head and a stable life. American Dream talks about owning a house after a lifetime of the work. Consumer Dream makes you believe that you can live as if you have succeeded, as long as consumption looks that way. And when the card declines the transaction, your dream also completely vanishes. Los Angeles is becoming a place where people live between two conflicting dreams. A dream of sustainable independence and a dream created by the media with dazzling lights. But when those dreams collide with the reality of shrinking budgets, disappearing jobs, and skyrocketing housing prices, they don't just shatter. They become a burden. A burden that the last to bear is not the politicians, CEOs, or advertisers, but ordinary people who once lived rightly and made every effort only to find they have no home to return to. If we build a society where human value is defined by consumption ability, then when they lose that ability, will they still be recognized by society as part of the community? Or do they simply disappear from sight, along with the trash bags and the lights that have gone out? Nowhere is the image of the decay of the American dream clearer than in its very trash cans. There, what was once promoted as essential, modern, must-have, now holds only a few cents in value, yet represents the entire life of those who are homeless. This is a typical loop of an urban doom loop, where extreme consumption leads to financial ruin. Financial ruin leads to unemployment and homelessness. And homelessness, in turn, leads to dependence on waste of a consumer society that has turned its back on them. A city once built to serve the consumer dream, with shopping malls, advertisements, convenience services, and personal credit, is now facing the very consequences of that model. Those who lost their jobs due to mass layoffs in city departments not only lost their salaries, but also the ability to sustain a life built on installment purchases and credit consumption. When they can no longer afford to pay, what remains for them to consume is the trash of those who are more fortunate. Not a few people who were once civil servants, who once lived in small, tidy apartments, are now setting up temporary sleeping quarters right behind shipping containers. They do not give up. They learn to adapt. They learn to gather what others discard, to extend another day without hunger, to survive and see the dawn for one more day. And in that cycle, the only thing that cannot be recycled is the opportunity. The opportunity to start over. The opportunity to rejoin the system. Because after a long enough time living on the fringes of society, few dare to call you a citizen anymore. Picking up trash, once thought to be the last act of helplessness, now symbolizes survival. But it is also a sign that the city is decaying layer by layer from the inside out. We can measure the amount of waste generated each day. But is there anyone who can truly measure how many lives are being thrown away along with them? Los Angeles has never lacked light, but the problem is that light only shines on half of the city. Just a few blocks away from where the homeless are lining up to exchange cans for a meal, there are rooftop restaurants where a cocktail costs as much as a week's worth of essentials. On Rodeo Drive, people still line up to buy designer bags, while just a few blocks away, those who once worked for the city are flipping cardboard to make a bed for the night. LA, the same city, but two worlds. A world where money is spent as if there is no tomorrow. A world that doesn't know where it will sleep tomorrow. And the boundary between those two worlds is sometimes as thin as a single job loss. What shocks people is not the division, because any city has its disparities, but rather the terrifying parallel, where glamorous images are painted thicker each day, is also where the most temporary tents spring up in the heart of the city. A city where you can see homeless people through the windows of luxury cars, yet continue to pass by as if they don't exist. In West LA, a luxury apartment complex is under construction, each unit starting at $1.8 million. Meanwhile, in South Central, a row of shelters, overwhelmed, had to turn away 37 people on the coldest night of the month. There is a paradox becoming more evident than ever. Places being built for the affluent are developing faster than those keeping people off the sidewalks. It is this ruthless parallel that has created a strange emotion: paralysis. People see the homeless every day, but they no longer see them. And when a city begins to see homelessness as a part of the landscape, perhaps what is breaking is not just policy or economy, but collective morality. Los Angeles was once the destination of the American dream. But if that dream is now only for half the city, what is the other half dreaming of? When night falls under a cold concrete awning. And if even dreams are divided, then what is truly left for all of us? When a person falls out of the system, the first question they often ask is there anywhere that can catch me? When someone falls out of the system, the first question they often ask is there a place that can support me? But in Los Angeles today, that answer is increasingly leaning towards silence. But in Los Angeles today, that answer is increasingly leaning towards silence. The government was once seen as the last safety net, a place to keep people from falling into despair, whether through housing subsidies, temporary shelters, or an emergency call to a support hotline. But when the budget is short by nearly $1 billion and thousands of employees are laid off, that very safety net is tearing apart piece by piece. And the first to fall through the hole are those who no longer have homes. The city once launched a series of programs. We Are LA, legal support to prevent eviction, housing vouchers for veterans, emergency temporary housing funds. But now, with resources being divided and tens of thousands of new people facing the risk of losing their homes, those measures are like a band-aid on a crack that stretches for miles. In a recent council meeting, a regional representative candidly admitted, "We can no longer keep the promise that no one will be left behind." It's not just an administrative statement, it is a bitter confession that the government of the second largest city in the United States is allowing those who once contributed to it to fall through the safety net. And perhaps that is what hurts the people the most, not because they demanded privileges, but because they once believed. They used to pay taxes regularly, used to attend neighborhood meetings, once contributed, once put in effort. And now, when they need a small support, a place to stay overnight, a procedure processed faster than usual, the system is overloaded, too slow, too complicated. We can discuss policies, budgets, and priorities. But in the end, it is the way we treat those who have just lost their homes that will define to whom this city belongs. And if the government is no longer the safety net, how many more people will have to fall before we realize we have no one left to catch? No one denies LA is drowning in crisis. But the noteworthy thing is, not all hope is lost. In the southern part of the city, a community-operated affordable housing complex has just completed its first phase. Not by a large budget or political promises, but thanks to the collaboration of non-profit organizations, parishes, and formerly homeless individuals who stood up to rebuild the system from the ground up. They don't talk about reviving the American dream as a slogan, but start with very specific things. A room with a locked door, a hot meal every day, a fixed address to go job hunting. Some new policies, albeit modest, have also been tested, like the We Are LA legal aid program, which helps people prevent eviction in a timely manner, or the effort to provide housing vouchers for all homeless veterans, showing that if there is will and the right priorities, the outcome is not impossible. But the real question is, do we have the courage to change our perspective on the American dream? Perhaps it is time to shed the outdated image of a dream associated with suburban mansions, green lawns, and shopping malls. Perhaps the new dream should start from a very basic recognition that every citizen, regardless of income, past or mistakes, deserves a home. No one expects a perfect city, but a kind city can definitely be built if we start with simple things: shelter, listening, and the will not to turn our backs on those who have lost everything. Because in the end, if Los Angeles, the city of cinema, of glamour, of the belief in rising up, cannot rebuild the American dream, then where else in this country can it be done? If Los Angeles, once a model of recovery after the 2008 crisis, is now struggling to cope with tens of thousands of people living without shelter, then the question is no longer confined to this city. It has become a warning that the American dream is gradually becoming a privilege reserved for the few. And the frightening thing is, homelessness, which was once seen as a fringe issue, has now become the most honest barometer of what is fracturing deep within America. From New York to Phoenix, from Seattle to Austin, major cities are witnessing the same repeating scenario: skyrocketing housing prices, unaffordable living costs, while incomes remain stagnant and welfare is being cut. Millions of people are just one job loss, one serious illness, or one breakup away from homelessness. When the system begins to contract, only protecting those who are still able to contribute, the once stable class also starts to feel themselves being gradually pushed to the margins. This is no longer a crisis of the poor. This is a crisis of the middle class losing their footing, a silent yet profoundly unsettling decline. A recent report from HUD shows that in 2024, the number of homeless people in the US increased by 12% compared to the previous year, the fastest rise since the 2008 crisis. In particular, the percentage of homeless individuals who were previously employed or are currently working part-time accounts for over 40%. This speaks to a harsh reality. Working is no longer enough to keep a home. Wages are no longer a safeguard against homelessness. And when a nation can no longer guarantee its citizens a minimum standard of housing, it is not just a housing crisis. It is a crisis of core values, about the promises repeated through generations, that America's a place where everyone has a chance, where everyone has a place to start over. No one wishes to turn back time, but no one can feel at ease when looking towards the future, if that future is built on an unstable and forgotten foundation like the present. Los Angeles did not collapse overnight. It collapsed gradually. Each house foreclosed, each employee laid off, each tent pitched in the streets, and each fragment of faith quietly shattered in the hearts of those who once believed in a fair, tolerant, and promise-keeping America. The consumer dream, once a driving force of development, once a symbol of prosperity, is now leaving behind consequences that no one wants to acknowledge. The trash bins filling up every day do not just contain discarded items, but also the lives of once stable individuals who contributed and are now forced to exist on the margins. We can continue to build more shopping malls, put up more billboards, and adjust the statistics to make them look better. But we cannot deny a truth clearer than ever. When people no longer have a place to live, it is no longer an economic issue, but a matter of social ethics. And if Los Angeles, the city of lights and hope, can no longer keep its people, then what will the rest of the country hold on to? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. This video is based on reports, data, and information publicly disclosed from press sources, non-governmental organizations, and statistical data from state authorities. All opinions, analyses, and arguments in the video are intended for educational purposes, social critique, and raising community awareness, not for criticizing any specific individual, organization, or government. We respect all differing viewpoints and encourage viewers to comment in a civilized and responsible manner.